In the outskirts of San Francisco, where the golden hues of the morning often melt into misty afternoons, a lonely figure resides in a weathered Victorian house. William Green, once celebrated as one of America's most prolific novelists, now lives as a recluse. His fame, fortune, and accolades feel like relics of a distant past, overshadowed by the haunting memory of a woman who once illuminated his world. Elena, his wife, passed away 2 decades ago in a tragic accident that left William's heart shattered and his life devoid of meaning. Despite the years that have passed, her absence remains a gaping void. No amount of literary success, no matter how grand, could fill the emptiness she left behind. The story opens on a dreary autumn day. The rain, soft yet relentless, pelts the windows of a small cafe nestled in the heart of the city. Inside, William sits alone in a corner, a steaming cup of black coffee untouched before him. His once sharp, piercing eyes now carry the weight of a man who has spent years searching for answers in the wrong places. The once vibrant energy that fueled his creativity has dulled, replaced by a mechanical existence of routine and regret. Through the window, he observes the bustling streets. Strangers rush past, clutching umbrellas and shielding themselves from the downpour. But one figure captures his attention, a young woman, barely out of her teenage years, cradling a baby in her arms. Her clothes are soaked through, clinging to her fragile frame as she stands near the edge of the sidewalk, clutching a cardboard sign that reads, "Help me feed my son." Something in William stirs. He tries to look away, to convince himself it's not his business. But her image lingers. It's the way she cradles the child so tenderly, shielding him from the rain with her own body. For a brief moment, the girl reminds him of Elena, not in appearance, but in her posture, her quiet determination, despite the harshness of the world around her. He gathers his courage and steps out into the rain, his long coat flapping in the wind. As he approaches her, the young woman looks up, startled. Her face is pale, her lips trembling, not just from the cold, but from exhaustion and fear. "Take this," William says, reaching into his wallet and pulling out several crisp bills. "It's more than enough for a warm meal and a dry place to rest." The girl hesitates, her eyes widening in disbelief. I don't know how to thank you," she stammers, clutching the money tightly. "You don't need to," William replies softly. "Just take care of yourself and your son." That night, William lies awake, staring at the ceiling of his dimly lit study. The encounter with the young woman plays on a loop in his mind. He wonders who she is, what led her to that rainy street corner, and what kind of life awaits her son if no one steps in to help. For the first time in years, he feels something stir within him, a faint flicker of purpose, but he brushes it aside, convincing himself that the moment was fleeting, a random act of kindness that need not mean anything more. Yet, as the rain continues to tap against the window, William can't shake the feeling that their paths will cross again. This is just the beginning of a story filled with mystery, heartbreak, and hope. If you're as curious as we are to see how this journey unfolds, make sure to hit that like button to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if this story already has you hooked, share it with someone who loves a good tale of redemption and family. Let's dive in together. The next morning dawned in shades of gray, the sun obscured by thick clouds that promised another day of relentless rain. William Green pulled his coat tighter around him as he made his way to the cemetery, a ritual he had followed religiously for the past 20 years. Every week, he visited the final resting place of Elena, seeking solace in the silent companionship of her memory. The cemetery, nestled on a quiet hillside overlooking the bay, was as somber as ever. Rows of gravestones stretched endlessly, each one a monument to a life once lived. William walked the familiar path, his footsteps crunching against the wet gravel. In his hand, he carried a bouquet of white lilies, Elena's favorite. As he approached her grave, William stopped abruptly. His heart skipped a beat, confusion and unease washing over him. There, kneeling before Elena's headstone, was a young woman. Her damp hair clung to her face as she hunched over, shoulders trembling with silent sobs. It was the same girl from the day before. She held a single white flower in her hand, its petals quivering in the breeze. Beside her sat a stroller, a tiny hand reaching out from within, clutching at the air. William's mind raced. Who was she? How did she know Elena? Steeling himself, he stepped closer, his voice breaking the stillness. "Excuse me, miss, what are you doing here?" The girl flinched, startled by his presence. She turned to face him, her tear-streaked face pale against the dull gray sky. For a moment, she simply stared at him, as if searching for the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I'm sorry, she said, quickly wiping her eyes. "I didn't mean to intrude." William frowned, his curiosity outweighing his hesitation. "This is Elena Green's grave. She was my wife. How do you know her?" The girl's lips quivered, and she glanced down at the flower in her hands before answering. "Elena, she was my mother." The words hit William like a bolt of lightning. He froze, his mind struggling to process what he had just heard. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and confusion. The girl hesitated, then took a deep breath, as if summoning every ounce of courage she had. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I was adopted as a baby, but recently I found a letter in my adoptive mother's belongings. It led me here, to Elena Green, to my mother." William's heart pounded in his chest. His knees felt weak as he tried to make sense of the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. Elena, the woman he had loved and mourned for 2 decades, had a child. How is this possible? William asked, his voice breaking. "Elena never told me she had a child. How could she keep this from me?" Sarah's eyes softened with a mixture of sympathy and sorrow. "I don't know," she admitted. The letter didn't say much, just that she had me and that she couldn't tell anyone. "Not even you." William stumbled backward, the weight of her words pressing down on him like a heavy fog. Memories of Elena flooded his mind, her laughter, her warmth, the way she would look at him with a love so pure it felt unshakable. Had it all been a facade? "Why are you here now?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Sarah flinched but held her ground. "Because I want to know the truth," she said, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes. "I want to know who my mother was, and I need to know if you're my father." The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. William stared at her, his mind reeling. If what Sarah said was true, it changed everything he thought he knew about Elena and himself. William began but stopped. He didn't have the words. Instead, he looked down at the small child in the stroller. The boy stared back at him with wide, curious eyes, his tiny fingers clutching a toy. "Is this your son?" William asked, his voice softening. Sarah nodded. "His name is Noah. He's the only family I have left now." Though William felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name, regret. Compassion? A strange, unspoken bond? He didn't know. All he knew was that this girl, this stranger who had upended his world in a matter of moments, was now standing before him, seeking answers he wasn't sure he could provide. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, William broke the silence. "If Elena really was your mother," he said slowly, "then we need to find out the truth. About her, about you, about everything." Sarah nodded, her expression a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "Thank you," she whispered. William turned back to the grave, his gaze lingering on Elena's name etched into the cold stone. He placed the lilies gently at the base, his mind racing with questions that only she could answer. But Elena was gone. And now, it was up to him to uncover the secrets she had taken to her grave. William Green stood frozen in place, his mind caught in a whirlwind of disbelief. The young woman, Sarah, claiming to be the daughter of his late wife, Elena, had just shaken his carefully constructed world to its core. The possibility that Elena had a child, a secret child, was a reality he was unprepared to face. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was palpable. The only sound breaking the silence was the faint rustle of leaves as the wind moved through the trees. "I don't understand," William said finally, his voice hoarse. "If you're truly Elena's daughter, why didn't she tell me?" Sarah hesitated, her hand tightening on the handle of Noah's stroller. "I wish I had the answers," she said softly. "The letter I found doesn't explain everything. It only says she had me, and for some reason, she felt she couldn't tell you. That's all I know." William's gaze drifted to the stroller, where Noah babbled quietly, blissfully unaware of the gravity of the conversation around him. The sight of the child, his small, chubby hands clutching at the air, brought a bittersweet ache to William's heart. "May I see the letter?" William asked, his voice steadying though his emotions were anything but. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. She hesitated for a moment before handing it to him. William unfolded it carefully, as if the fragile parchment carried the weight of the truth he so desperately sought. The letter was short, written in Elena's unmistakable handwriting. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, it means you've grown into the person I always dreamed you would be. There are things I kept hidden, things I thought were for the best at the time. Your father, I couldn't tell him about you. Not then. It's a choice I regret every day, but I believed it was the only way to protect everyone. I hope one day you'll understand. With all my love, Elena." William's hands trembled as he read the words. The familiar curves of her handwriting were like a ghost reaching out from the past, stirring emotions he had long buried. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to keep control. But the bitterness of betrayal mixed with a profound sadness threatened to overwhelm him. "She wanted to protect me," William said aloud, more to himself than to Sarah. "Protect me from what?" "I don't know," Sarah said quietly. "But there's more." She reached back into her bag and retrieved a second item, a small notebook. This belonged to her. It's a journal she kept in the last year of her life. I thought you might want to see it. William hesitated before taking the journal, his fingers brushing against the leather cover. It felt like holding a piece of Elena herself, a fragment of her thoughts and emotions frozen in time. "I haven't read much of it," Sarah admitted. "I thought it should be yours." William nodded, his throat tightening with emotion. "Thank you," he managed to say. As the conversation lulled, William looked at Sarah with fresh eyes. There was something about her, a flicker of determination in her gaze, the way she carried herself despite her struggles, that reminded him of Elena. "What do you want from me?" William asked gently. "I mean, why did you come here?" "To the grave? To find me?" Sarah hesitated, glancing down at Noah before meeting William's eyes. "I came here because I needed to understand where I come from. I needed to know who my mother was. And I needed to find out if you're my father." The words hung heavy in the air. William felt his chest tighten. The thought that Sarah might be his daughter both terrified and intrigued him. It was a possibility that could change everything about the life he thought he had lived. "I don't know," William said slowly, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. "But if there's a chance, then we'll find out." A quiet determination settled between them. William wasn't sure if Sarah was truly his daughter, but he couldn't ignore the responsibility he felt toward her, or the pull she and Noah seemed to have on his heart. "Let's start with this," William said, holding up the journal. "Maybe it can tell us what Elena couldn't." Sarah nodded, a flicker of hope crossing her face. "I just want the truth," she said softly. William glanced at Elena's headstone. The words "beloved wife" etched into the stone, staring back at him like an unspoken accusation. If Elena had kept such a monumental secret, what else had she hidden? As they walked away from the grave together, The journal clutched tightly in William's hands. He couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of unraveling the mysteries of Elena's past, and the beginning of something unexpected with Sarah and Noah. That evening, William sat alone in his study, the dim light of the desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. Before him lay the worn leather journal Sarah had handed him at the cemetery. His hands rested on its cover, hesitant to open it, as if the truths within might change the course of his life forever. The journal carried the faint scent of lavender, a fragrance that immediately brought him back to Elena, the way she used to tuck fresh lavender into her dresser drawers, the way her presence could fill a room with warmth. He exhaled sharply, summoning the courage to face whatever secrets she had left behind. The first few entries were benign, detailing the mundane routines of Elena's days. But as William turned the pages, her words began to reveal cracks in the life he had thought they shared. William's been working late again. I know he means well, he's building a future for us. But sometimes I wonder if he sees me at all. The loneliness is suffocating. William's heart sank. He had always believed that his dedication to his work was for their benefit, a way to ensure they never wanted for anything. Yet, reading her words now, he saw the distance it had created. Marcus came by today. He always knows how to make me laugh. It's been a long time since I've felt this light, this seen. His grip on the journal tightened at the mention of Marcus. The casual remark stirred an unease deep within him. Marcus, his closest friend, had been a constant presence in their lives back then, a trusted confidant and a fixture at their dinner table. As the entries progressed, the tone of Elena's writing shifted. The light-hearted musings gave way to anguish and self-recrimination. I've made a terrible mistake. I don't know how to fix it. I love William, but my heart feels torn in two. Marcus, I don't know how it happened. A moment of weakness, of wanting to feel alive again. And now I carry a secret that could destroy everything. William's breath caught in his throat. He read the lines again, hoping he had misunderstood, but the words stared back at him with painful clarity. Elena had betrayed him. His mind raced with memories, those late nights at work, the times Marcus had stayed over after dinner, the moments he had trusted his friend without question. It all felt tainted now, viewed through the lens of Elena's confession. As he read on, Elena's torment became more evident. Her words revealed her growing fear and uncertainty about the consequences of her actions. I've discovered I'm pregnant. I can't breathe. I don't know if it's William's or Marcus's, and I can't bear the thought of either possibility. How can I tell them? How can I ruin the lives of the two people I care about most? The room seemed to close in around William. He pushed the journal away and leaned back in his chair, running a trembling hand through his hair. The possibility that Sarah might not be his daughter was like a dagger to the heart. Worse still was the realization that Elena had carried this burden alone, unable or unwilling to share it with him. In the final entries, Elena's tone became somber, almost resigned. I've decided. I'll tell no one. It's better this way. William deserves to be happy. And Marcus, well, he has his own life to live. I'll raise this child with love, but I can't let the truth destroy everything we've built. If something happens to me, perhaps Sarah will one day understand. I hope she forgives me. Sure, the last entry was dated just weeks before her death. William closed the journal, his hands trembling as he processed the revelations. The woman he had adored, the woman he had grieved for 2 decades, had hidden a secret that altered everything he thought he knew about their life together. As much as the journal broke his heart, it also deepened his resolve. Sarah deserved answers, answers that Elena could no longer provide. If there was any way to uncover the truth about her father, William knew he owed it to her. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway, hesitant. I didn't mean to interrupt, she said softly, glancing at the journal in his hands. Did you find anything? William looked at her, a mixture of sadness and determination in his eyes. Yes, he said, his voice steady. But we still have more to uncover. We'll figure this out together. For the first time, Sarah's expression softened into something resembling hope. Thank you, she whispered. As she turned to leave, William's gaze lingered on the journal. The truths within were devastating, but they also carried a strange sense of clarity. For better or worse, this was his chance to make things right, not just for himself, but for Sarah and Noah. And so, he resolved to confront Marcus. The past was no longer something he could avoid. It was time to face it head on. William didn't sleep that night. The weight of Elena's journal pressed down on him like a storm cloud, dark and unrelenting. As dawn broke, the faint light streaming through the curtains did little to lift the heaviness in his chest. If there was one thing he knew, it was that the time for avoiding the truth had passed. He had to confront Marcus. Marcus still lived in the city, a short drive from William's home. They hadn't spoken in over a decade, not since Marcus had moved to focus on his own life and career. Their once inseparable friendship had dissolved into silence, and now William wondered if the distance between them had been more than coincidence. Standing outside Marcus's townhouse, William hesitated. His hand hovered over the doorbell, his heart pounding as memories of their friendship flashed through his mind. He thought of the laughter they had shared, the trust they had built, and the betrayal he now felt in every corner of his soul. Finally, he pressed the button. The chime echoed faintly, and moments later, the door swung open. "William," Marcus said, surprise flickering across his face. He was older now, his once jet black hair streaked with gray, but his sharp blue eyes still held the same intensity. "This is unexpected. We need to talk," William said. His voice clipped. "It's about Elena." Wynn sighed. The tension was palpable. Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee, but neither of them touched their drinks. William cut straight to the point. "I know about you and Elena," he said, his eyes locking onto Marcus's. Marcus froze, his hand tightening around the coffee mug. For a moment, he seemed unsure whether to deny it or come clean. Finally, he sighed, setting the mug down with a soft thud. "I suppose you found out through her journal," Marcus said quietly. William's jaw tightened. "You knew she kept this from me." "You both did. You were my best friend." "Marcus, how could you?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, leaning back in his chair. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he admitted. "We were both in a bad place. You were always working. And Elena, she was lonely. I was there when she needed someone, and one thing led to another." "You think that excuses what you did?" William snapped, his voice rising. "You betrayed me. Both of you. I don't expect you to forgive me," Marcus said, his tone calm but tinged with regret. "I've lived with this guilt for years, but there's something you need to know." Marcus leaned forward, his expression grave. "I'm not sure Sarah is yours or mine." William's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "Elena and I..." Marcus hesitated, searching for the right words. It was brief. "A mistake. But there was someone else. A man she confided in while you were busy with your career. She never told me much about him, but I know she was afraid of him, terrified. Even, he wasn't kind." William stared at Marcus, the implications of his words sinking in. Elena's journal had hinted at her fear, her desperation to protect those she loved. But this revelation added a new layer of darkness to her past. "Do you know who he was?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shook his head. "No, she kept his identity a secret. But if he's Sarah's father, then you need to be careful. If he's still out there..." William left Marcus's house feeling more conflicted than ever. The betrayal of his friend still stung, but now there was a new urgency to uncover the identity of this unknown man. As much as it pained him, he had to put his anger aside for Sarah's sake and for Noah's. Returning home, William found Sarah sitting on the porch, Noah asleep in her lap. Her face lit up with cautious relief when she saw him. "How did it go?" she asked hesitantly. William sat beside her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Marcus confirmed what I read in Elena's journal. He said, "But there's more. There might be another man. Someone from Elena's past. Someone she was afraid of." Sarah's eyes widened, her grip on Noah tightening. "What does that mean?" "It means we need answers," William said firmly. "And I think the journal might hold the key. Elena wouldn't have left us in the dark if she thought this man could be a danger to you or Noah." That evening, William and Sarah pored over the journal together, searching for any hint of this mysterious man. Near the back, they found an entry that stood out. "He keeps calling, threatening. I don't know what he wants anymore. I've told him I want nothing to do with him, but he won't listen. If William ever finds out, no, I can't let that happen. I have to protect him. I have to protect all of us." Beside the entry was a small drawing, a rough sketch of a symbol that looked like a ring encircling an eye. "What is this?" Sarah asked, tracing the symbol with her finger. William shook his head. "I don't know, but it might be a clue." For the discovery of the symbol set them on a new path. William resolved to dig deeper into Elena's life, determined to uncover the identity of the man who had haunted her and the meaning behind the cryptic drawing. For Sarah, the stakes had never felt higher. She had come seeking answers about her past, but now found herself swept into a mystery far more dangerous than she had imagined. As William stared at the journal one last time before closing it, he made a silent vow. No matter what it took, he would protect Sarah and Noah from the shadows of Elena's past, even if it meant confronting the darkness himself. William sat in his car outside Marcus's townhouse, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel as he rehearsed the conversation in his mind. He had faced Marcus once before to confront the betrayal revealed in Elena's journal. But the new discovery, the possibility of another man, changed everything. This wasn't just about friendship, loyalty, or even the past anymore. This was about Sarah's future, and perhaps her safety. He stepped out of the car, the cool autumn breeze biting at his skin as he approached the front door. This time, his resolve was firm. He wasn't here for apologies or explanations. He was here for answers. The door creaked open, revealing Marcus, his expression guarded. He didn't seem surprised to see William, but hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. "I take it this isn't a social visit," Marcus said. His tone clipped as they moved to the living room. "You're right," William replied, his voice sharp. "We need to talk about Elena, and this time, I need the full truth." Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as he gestured for William to sit, but William remained standing, his arms crossed and his gaze unyielding. "I told you everything I know," Marcus began, but William cut him off. "No, you didn't," William said. "You gave me pieces, just enough to shift the blame. But now I know there was another man in Elena's life, someone she was afraid of, and I need to know if you had anything to do with it." Marcus's jaw tightened. He walked to the window, his back to William, and stared out at the street below. "I knew about him," he admitted after a long pause. William's chest tightened. "Who was he?" "I don't know his name," Marcus said, turning to face William. "Elena didn't tell me much, but I could tell he had some kind of hold over her. She mentioned him a few times, always in passing, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable." William stepped closer, his frustration boiling over. "Why didn't you say something earlier? Why keep this from me?" Marcus's voice rose, a rare crack in his usual calm demeanor. "Because I didn't think it mattered. Back then, I thought she was just venting, that it was a part of her past she wanted to forget. And after she died, what was the point of dredging it up? You were already broken." William reached into his pocket and pulled out a photocopy of the journal entry, showing Marcus the strange symbol Elena had drawn beside her words of fear. "This," William said, pointing to the sketch. "Do you recognize it?" Marcus's eyes narrowed as he studied the paper. After a moment, his expression darkened. "Yes," he said quietly. William's heart raced. What does it mean? It's the symbol of a group, Marcus explained. A small, secretive organization. They're not exactly a gang, but they're dangerous, very dangerous. Back when I worked in real estate, I crossed paths with a few of them. Let's just say they have their hands in a lot of illegal dealings. William felt a chill run down his spine. And you think this man Elena feared was part of that group? Marcus nodded grimly. It's possible. If he was, then her fear wasn't unfounded. These people don't let go easily. If she tried to cut ties with him, he didn't need to finish the sentence. As William processed Marcus's words, the doorbell rang. Both men exchanged a glance before Marcus moved to answer it. When the door opened, a man stood on the threshold. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and an unsettling air of confidence. His dark eyes scanned the room before settling on William. "Mr. Green," the man said, his voice smooth but cold. "I believe we have something to discuss." William's stomach churned. "Who are you?" The man stepped inside uninvited, his presence dominating the room. "Someone who knew Elena quite well," he said, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "And someone who has a vested interest in the daughter she left behind." William's blood ran cold. "Sarah? What do you want with her?" "Let's just say," the man replied, his tone casual but menacing, "that Elena owed me something, and I believe her daughter is the key to settling that debt." Marcus stepped forward, his voice firm. "You need to leave. Now." The man's smirk widened. "Relax, Marcus. This doesn't concern you yet." He turned back to William. "I'm here to give you a warning. Stay out of this. If you value your life and hers, you'll leave the past where it belongs." William's fist clenched, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "If you come near Sarah or Noah, I swear I'll—" The man raised a hand, cutting him off. "Careful, Mr. Green. Threats won't end well for you." Without another word, the man turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of the encounter pressing down on both men. Finally, William turned to Marcus. "We're not done," he said, his voice steely. "I need to know everything about that symbol, about the group, about anyone Elena might have been connected to. If they're coming after Sarah, I'm not going to stand by and do nothing." Marcus hesitated but eventually nodded. "I'll help," he said. "Whatever it takes." William's mind was already racing. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just a part of Elena's past, he was a threat to their present. And if William had learned anything in the last few days, it was that he couldn't afford to lose the people he cared about again. The tension between William and Sarah had grown ever since their confrontation with Marcus and the ominous visit from the stranger. The possibility of danger looming over Sarah and her son, Noah, was enough to keep William awake at night. But beneath it all, another question gnawed at him relentlessly. Was Sarah truly his daughter? There was only one way to find out. A week after their unsettling encounter, William sat across from Sarah at the kitchen table in his home. The DNA test kits lay between them, their sterile packaging a stark contrast to the emotional weight of what they represented. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Sarah asked, her voice wavering. William nodded, though his chest felt tight. "I need to know, Sarah, for both of us." She hesitated, then picked up one of the kits and began reading the instructions. They worked in silence, swabbing their mouths and sealing the samples in the provided containers. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken fears and fragile hopes. As William sealed his kit, he looked up at Sarah. "No matter what the results say, it doesn't change how I feel. You and Noah, you're family to me now." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she gave him a small, grateful smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." The days that followed were filled with an unbearable tension. William tried to focus on his writing, but the words refused to come. Sarah busied herself caring for Noah, but her distant gaze betrayed her anxious thoughts. Every time the doorbell rang, Their hearts jumped, but it was never the results they were waiting for. It was as if the universe was prolonging their agony. Finally, after 10 agonizing days, the envelope arrived. William held it in his hands, the weight of the small package feeling impossibly heavy. "Are you ready?" he asked Sarah, who stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly together. She nodded, though her expression betrayed her apprehension. They sat together in the living room, the envelope resting on the coffee table between them. The silence stretched out until it became almost unbearable. "You open it," Sarah said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. William reached for the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. He tore it open and unfolded the document inside. His eyes scanned the text, searching for the answer that would either confirm or shatter everything. His breath caught. "Well?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with equal parts hope and dread. William looked up at her, his face pale. It says, "I'm not your biological father." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Sarah stared at him, her face blank with shock. "You're not?" "No," William said quietly, his voice breaking. "I'm not." The room fell into a heavy silence. William felt his heart sink as he watched Sarah struggle to process the news. "I don't understand," she said finally, her voice trembling. "If you're not my father, and Marcus isn't either, then who is?" William shook his head, his mind racing. "I don't know, but we'll find out. Whoever he is, he's part of Elena's past, and part of the danger we're facing now." Sarah's gaze dropped to Noah, who was playing with a toy on the floor, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding him. "Does this mean Noah doesn't have a family?" William reached out and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No," he said firmly. "He has you, and he has me. Blood doesn't make a family, Sarah. Love does." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. As they sat in the aftermath of the revelation, William's thoughts turned back to the journal and the mysterious man Elena had feared. He remembered the strange symbol, a ring encircling an eye, and the cryptic words she had written about threats and debts. "Sarah," he said suddenly, "Elena must have known who your father was. If we keep looking through her things, there has to be something, some clue that will lead us to him." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "If he's connected to the danger we're in now, we need to find him. For Noah's sake." Later that night, William sat alone in his study, the DNA results still on the desk before him. The shock of the revelation had left him reeling, but it also strengthened his resolve. Whoever this man was, he had not only played a part in Elena's hidden past, but was now casting a shadow over Sarah and Noah's future. And William wouldn't let him get away with it. As he stared out the window, his reflection mingling with the dark night beyond, he made a silent vow. He would protect Sarah and Noah at all costs. The quiet that had settled over the house in the days following the DNA results was deceptive. While William and Sarah focused on unraveling the mysteries of Elena's past, a storm loomed just beyond their awareness. Sarah had taken Noah to a nearby park that afternoon. It was one of the few places where she could clear her mind and let Noah enjoy some fresh air. She sat on a bench, watching her son toddle around the sandbox, his laughter a temporary reprieve from the weight of their uncertain future. But as she scanned the park, a prickle of unease crept over her. A man stood near the edge of the trees, partially obscured by shadows. He wasn't dressed like the other parents or caregivers, no casual clothes or gentle demeanor. He wore a dark jacket and sunglasses, his posture rigid as his eyes followed her every move. Sarah's heart began to race. She tried to brush off her fears, convincing herself that he was just another passerby. But when she gathered Noah and began heading toward the parking lot, the man started walking, too, keeping a careful distance but clearly following her. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to remain calm. She strapped Noah into his car seat, her hands trembling as she tried to buckle the latch. "Looking for something, Sarah?" A cold voice said behind her. She froze. Slowly, she turned to face the man. Up close, his sharp features were even more intimidating. There was a faint scar running down the side of his jaw, and his eyes, even hidden behind the dark lenses, seemed to pierce through her. "I don't know who you are," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, I think you do," he replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. The man stepped closer, his tone low and menacing. "Your mother thought she could keep her secrets buried, but secrets have a way of crawling back to the surface, don't they?" Sarah's breath caught. "What do you want?" "I want what your mother owed me," he said, his smirk fading into a hard line. "And if you don't cooperate, maybe your son will be the one to pay the price." Her stomach dropped. Instinctively, she moved to shield Noah, her hand gripping the stroller handle tightly. "Stay away from him," she said, her voice shaking but firm. The man chuckled, the sound chilling in its casual cruelty. "Then you'd better listen carefully. I want the journal, the letters, whatever else your mother left behind. Bring them to me, or I'll make sure you regret it." Sarah's mind raced. She needed to get out of there, but the man's presence loomed, blocking her path to the driver's side door. "Please," she said, her voice softer now, trying to buy time. "Just let me get my son home. I'll get you what you want." The man tilted his head, studying her. For a moment, she thought he might let her go, but then he reached for the stroller. It was instinct that took over. Sarah shoved the stroller forward, forcing the man to step back. She lunged for the driver's side door, throwing herself into the car and slamming it shut. The man recovered quickly, slamming his hand against the window. "You can't run from this, Sarah," he snarled. But she was already starting the engine, her hands shaking as she shifted into reverse. She backed out of the parking spot and sped away, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear Noah's frightened cries from the back seat. When Sarah pulled into William's driveway, she didn't even wait for the car to stop completely before she unbuckled herself and Noah. Carrying him tightly against her chest, she ran to the front door, pounding on it with her free hand. William opened the door, alarmed by the panic etched across her face. "What happened?" he demanded, ushering her inside. "There was a man," Sarah gasped, her voice trembling. He followed me. He knows about the journal. He threatened Noah." William's face darkened, his jaw clenching as he processed her words. "Did you recognize him? Did he give a name?" "No," Sarah said, shaking her head. "But he said my mother owed him something. He wants the journal and the letters. He knew who I was." "William." He knew Noah's name. William paced the living room, his mind racing. The stranger's demands confirmed what they already suspected. Elena's past held far more danger than they'd realized. And now, that danger had found its way to Sarah and Noah. "This isn't just about the journal anymore," William said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "Whoever this man is, he's not going to stop. We need to find out what he's after and why." Sarah hugged Noah tightly, her fear giving way to a growing determination. "We can't give him what he wants," she said. "Not until we know what's really going on." William nodded. "Agreed. But we also can't let him keep threatening you. I'll make some calls. There are people I know, private investigators. If this man is connected to Elena's past, we'll find him." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with both gratitude and lingering fear. "Thank you," she whispered. William placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this, Sarah, together." That night, as Sarah sat by Noah's crib, watching him sleep, her mind replayed the events of the day. The stranger's words echoed in her ears, but they no longer filled her with the same paralyzing fear. She wasn't just running anymore. She was fighting for Noah, for herself, and for the truth about her mother. In the study downstairs, William sifted through Elena's journal and letters, determined to uncover the connection between her past and the man who had threatened Sarah. As he worked, a new sense of purpose burned within him. The shadows of Elena's secrets were long, but William and Sarah were no longer standing in them alone. The confrontation with the stranger had left Sarah and William shaken, but it also brought a new sense of urgency. Together, they dove deeper into Elena's journal and the clues she had left behind. Each page revealed fragments of her life, moments of joy, pain, and fear, painting a vivid picture of a woman who had loved deeply but lived with secrets too heavy to bear. With the help of a private investigator William had hired, they uncovered the identity of the man who had threatened Sarah. He was part of a shadowy organization connected to Elena's past, a past that included manipulation and coercion during one of the darkest periods of her life. Elena had been forced into a toxic relationship with this man, and when she tried to escape, she had taken something vital from him, a ledger containing incriminating evidence about the organization's activities. That ledger, it seemed, was now their target, and they believed Sarah had it or knew where it was. The final confrontation came on a stormy night when the man broke into William's home, determined to retrieve the ledger. But William and Sarah were ready. They had contacted the authorities, who were waiting nearby. As the intruder demanded answers, William stood firm. "You've caused enough pain," he said, his voice steady. "This ends now." The man lunged, but the police stormed in, arresting him and bringing his reign of terror to an end. The discovery of the ledger, hidden in a secret compartment in Elena's old desk, provided the evidence needed to dismantle the organization for good. In the weeks that followed, the pieces of their lives slowly began to fall into place. William and Sarah's bond grew stronger, forged in the fire of shared struggles. Though the DNA test had confirmed they were not biologically related, their connection transcended blood. "Family isn't about DNA," William told Sarah one afternoon as they watched Noah play in the garden. "It's about showing up, loving each other, and standing together when it matters most. And that's what we have now." Sarah smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "I think that's what Mom would have wanted," she said softly. With the danger behind them, Sarah began to build a new life for herself and Noah, supported by William and the stability he offered. William, in turn, found a renewed sense of purpose in his writing, drawing inspiration from the love and resilience he saw in Sarah and Noah. One day, as Sarah was sorting through some of Elena's belongings, she found a final letter addressed to William. She hesitated before handing it to him, unsure of what it might say. William opened the envelope with trembling hands and began to read, "My dearest William, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused, for the secrets I kept. But please know that everything I did out of love. I hope one day you'll understand and forgive me. Take care of Sarah and her child as if they were your own. They will need you. And perhaps, through them, you will find the happiness you deserve. Always yours, Elena." Tears welled in William's eyes as he folded the letter. For the first time in 2 decades, he felt a sense of peace. Elena's words, though bittersweet, had given him the closure he needed. As time passed, their small, unconventional family flourished. William became a grandfather figure to Noah, and Sarah thrived, no longer weighed down by the shadows of her past. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sun set, Sarah turned to William. "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" William smiled, his gaze soft. "I think she'd be proud of you, of the strength you've shown, and of the life you're building for Noah." Sarah took his hand, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." And so, their story became one of redemption, love, and hope. A reminder that even in the face of loss and darkness, it's never too late to rebuild. What about you? Have you ever faced a challenge that changed the way you see family or love? What do you think is the true meaning of family? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue bringing you these heartfelt tales. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that could brighten your day or touch your heart. Thank you for watching. And remember, it's never too late for a new beginning.